Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos. I'm the founder and CEO of Product School. And today I'm here with a very special guest. Her name is Xiaoyin Q, and she's the founder and CEO at Run the World. Hello.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Super honored to be here. I'm Xiaoyin. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining the show. I'm excited to talk to you because you have a very interesting background, the way you broke into product and then now a CEO. So let's start from the beginning. What's kind of the start of your story? How did you start thinking about tech?
It's funny. So I was born and raised in China originally, and I moved to the U.S. When I was 18 years old for college. Initially I was an economics major because I thought I want to be a lawyer. But then I got an internship program when I was a sophomore. So there was a special program in my school where we took a semester off to go work for a company in Silicon Valley. Actually, I didn't know anything about tech back then, but I thought it was a great time because I was bored of school. I just want to get out. So I got an internship at a company that back then was really small called Atlassian. It was like 8 years ago, something. It was a long time ago. It was a really small company, but I really loved the internship. It was only a few hundred people in Atlassian back then. I was one of their first like marketing hires for the like Asian market, so it was like really young. But I loved tech, and I loved Atlassian. But I realized that because I didn't have any tech background, I don't really get to say anything about product. I was in the marketing team, so it's whatever the product managers decide to build. I gotta build social media marketing materials around that, but I don't get to control anything. So I thought, oh, it would be really cool if I can be a product manager. And then I realized, oh, you need to have a CS degree. So I went back to school actually, junior year. I decided to major in computer science in addition to economics. So then I basically did like 2 years of computer science, and then I graduated. And then I was really fortunate to get an offer at Facebook to work as a product manager as one of their special program. There's a RPM programs, rotational product manager program. So I became like a really junior PM at Facebook. But then I kind of grew my career at Facebook and Instagram. Then after a few years, I went to Stanford for MBA. I dropped out to start around the world. So that's kind of my whole journey so far. Yeah.
That is so cool. So I want to dig deeper into some of the things that you mentioned.
Yeah, for sure.
So you joined this small company called Atlassian, which is now huge. It's a private company.
I know. Yeah, I know.
In marketing. And did you know what product management was, or did you kind of find out as when you were working there?
No, I have no idea. I heard it actually from one of our conversation that I was really intern. I was trying to learn as much as I can. So there were some coworkers having lunch one day, and they told me that product manager is a really cool job because they were complaining about something to do with product or something. I think that was like a casual conversation. They were complaining about something wrong with the product, and they're like, "Oh, I wish I could be the product manager." And I was like, "Wait, what is that?" And then they kind of explained to me how it worked, and then they told me that there's a special program that back then Google has called Associate Product Manager Program. They told me that was like the best program. That's like the McKinsey of tech or something. I was like, oh, wow, that sounds interesting. So that's kind of how I heard about product management from a marketing coworker's complaint.
I come from an engineering background. I did an internship in marketing. That's the exact same way I found out about product. So, and you're right, like back in the day, there wasn't really schools teaching product. So Google was really the school with this product management program. Yeah. And then you mentioned Facebook has this rotational product management program. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? How does it work, and what kind of requirements do you need to have in order to apply?
For Facebook, there's not much requirement. There's no requirement that you have to have a CS degree, actually. But for Google, it was required that you have a CS degree. So Facebook is more just anybody can apply, and they will typically ask you a few rounds of questions, typically around like designing an app that helps you celebrate birthday, for example. Some like a random idea, and then you build a product along with that. They will ask you a lot of questions on like metrics and how do you analyze the right data. It's something that I didn't really prepare much. And back then there was no like product management interview materials. when I was applying, so there was no materials. So yeah, and then anybody can apply Facebook, and then you just go past the interviews. We have people like who are musicians before, people who are bankers, and also people in college that came from different majors too. It could be biology or pre-med major, it could be like legal, it could be economics. So it's really kind of all over the place. But I know that Google requires you to have a CS degree, and they even interview on coding. I remember that one of my interview at Google for the internship, I failed because I didn't pass the coding interview. So I know that they have a coding interview.
That has evolved quite a bit, and I agree with you. Back in the day, pretty much you had to know how to code and come from an engineering background. Now I'm glad to see that companies are being much more open to the idea of bringing diverse backgrounds to make products better at the end of the day. But you're very modest. I know that those programs are extremely exclusive, and you have to put a lot of work into that in order to get accepted. And then, of course, you keep learning on the go, right? Because in a way, you join as an associate product manager, and then they rotate you through the company.
That's right. Yeah. So once you join, I got assigned to like 3 different teams, and then they're typically very different. So the first team that I was in, so each team is like half a year, and then you got to experience different stage of the product. So one of my first product was in Pages. It was fairly mature. And so it was like for Page, there's like a bunch of analytics that helps the businesses in Facebook understanding their performances, how many new followers they have, and like, which content makes the most sense for them. So that was my first product. And then I went to Instagram, which is completely different. Now serving like more consumers, I was more focusing on like growth. So how to get more people using Instagram. Back then it was a few 100 million people. It was now like 1 billion people right now. So that was a really interesting experience as well. And then I went back to Facebook for video team, and that in that case is entirely 0 to 1, which is we're building a lot of like new things for influencer and creators at Facebook to monetize better and engage with their fans better. So that was a new problem space back then at Facebook. So the idea is that through those rotation, you got to work and company of different product of different stages and solving different problems. Some of them are analytics problems. Some of them are search and ranking problems. Some of them are growth problems, and some of them are more just like creative, building new things from scratch. So and the idea is that now then after 3 ideas, okay, which team do you want to join permanently? Oh, and permanent at Facebook means like 1.5 years. Which team do you want to join long term? So that's kind of how the program works.
So at what point you're like, okay, this is cool, but then I want to build my own thing and become a founder and CEO?
I think I always wanted to build my own thing. I did a lot of hackathons. It's like the 3-year mark. At that time, I was a senior PM. And then typically, some of my friends at Facebook, Google, once you became a senior product manager or senior engineer or whatever, that's your like awakening moment, realizing, hey, what am I doing with my life? I got to do something more than that. And typically you'll get like puzzled for like a few months or something. You either choose to stay with Facebook because you just bought a house, you want to pay the mortgage, or you're like, fuck that, I just want to move to a different company or doing my own thing. So that typically you see that a lot of people making some kind of career move once they became senior. So I was in that same exact boat. And I guess after a few months of puzzle, I was thinking I wanted to start a company, but I wasn't sure what idea to pursue back then. I didn't have an idea, but I just knew that I couldn't stay in the large company for too long. So I chose to go to MBA actually, and just to figure out there I can maybe shift environment a little bit and talk to some more people. And that's when I decided to go to Stanford.
All right. And then you said that you dropped out
I dropped out after a year. Yeah.
Very cool. So tell me a little bit more about Run the World.
Yeah. So I started Run the World 2019. It was a little over a year ago. And then at that time, there was no COVID. There was no virtual events. It's just my mom was a doctor in China, and she has never been to an international conference before. So she got to go to an international conference for the first time in 2019. It was a physical. So she flew all the way to US and met another doctor from Dubai. It turns out they share the same rare patient case. So it was super helpful for her to kind of learn from the other doctor and figure out what she wants to do with her own patient. But that experience is really hard because my family's from China. They're still there. It's really hard to get a visa. I guess you're an immigrant, you probably know. It's really hard to get a visa. So it's really hard for her to travel all the time to go to this international conference. And that was her first time after 30 35 years in medicine. So I thought there must be a way where my mom can meet other doctors more often. And we concluded the only way possible would be to build an event that's entirely online so my mom can socialize with other people. So that's kind of what we decided to pursue the idea. Most people think that was really stupid back then because there was no COVID and obviously there's no existing behavior. But we just thought, oh, that was a good idea. So we just pursued it. And then now we have kind of grew really fast. We raised our Series A, a total of like $15 million in fundraising. And then we have almost like 15,000 more events hosted and created in our platform. Yeah.
I mean, timing couldn't be better, but also
timing is great. Yeah.
Your story is inspiring. Your team is great. Your lead investor is Andreessen Horowitz, right?
Yeah, Andreessen Horowitz Founders Fund and also Will Smith. Actually, fun.
Really cool. And I know that this year has been kind of crazy. So that you were also named Forbes 30 under 30, LinkedIn top voice.
Yeah, I guess it's help. Sometimes I have to promote, the company in social media. Kind of, I guess LinkedIn noticed that way. So kind of, it's funny that I'm LinkedIn top voice too. Yeah.
So how do you think that your previous experience as a product manager helped you start your own company?
So our company is really a product first company. We're not really doing any logistic or operations as much, as DoorDash or some other company. We're entirely a software company. So product is as very core of our business. In fact, in the current team, we have around 50 people, 30 plus are in product and engineering. So that's is exactly what I did before, which is really helpful. And then the other thing is more like, if you think about what we do, we're innovating on a new space that doesn't exist before. So it requires a lot of kind of iterations and then the kind of the new ways to build new things and test really quickly. So that is a lot of product thinking of day to day. So I couldn't really start the current company if I don't have the necessary experiences from the past as a product manager.
So a lot of people have experienced their first virtual event at some point in the last 12 months. And obviously there's a lot of room for improvement from what started as literally a video call is now evolving into an entire different experience. So how do you think about the future of virtual events?
Yeah, so we are really seeing kind of three things. One is that the events are getting shorter but more engaging. So historically, when we first started the company, we launched our first product earlier in 2020. Most people just want to shift their virtual conferences for 3-day event from physical to online. It was really long. It was more focusing on content delivery. But now we're seeing more events that are shorter because people don't have a really long attention span, but also more interactive things so we offer ability for audience to come to stage and ask questions. So in this show, for example, someone can come and their face can pop up. They can talk to me and build a relationship. We're focusing on a lot of networking, like speed networking or matchmaking functionality. We're focusing a lot of group discussions so people can there's a bunch of different topics. You can choose which topic you want to talk about, and then you can go on and off on the topic they're interested in. So there's a bunch of things that we're really building to facilitate interaction, which we find is the most important thing. So that's first is more it's getting shorter. Second is getting more interactive. The third is that we're seeing more and more monetization popping up in virtual events too. So we're today we enable people to sell for ticketing. They can monetize that way. We have somebody who makes $400,000 in the past year just running events around the world. So we're seeing more and more new monetization mechanism, whether it's kind of the ticketing or tipping or membership fees. So we're continuously going to build more. 2020, most people are not willing to charge, or they don't dare to charge anything yet because they're not sure what value they're bringing. But now we're seeing more and more people starting to ask us, how do we monetize better? So those are kind of the three things we see.
Definitely. You have one of those rare opportunities to really change the behavior, create a new market for people, because this is not a second best option for an offline event. This is an entire new experience. And I used your product both as an attendee and also as a speaker once, and that was really cool. I took my first group selfie, and I felt like this was just a whole new immersion experience for me. I was trying not to compare with the real, the offline world. It was more about, okay, I'm here and there. Can we make it the best possible?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's right. I'm glad that you like the product. Yes, exactly. So the whole old days is either you have Instagram Live, which you're more focusing on broadcasting, but the audience themselves cannot really interact with the speaker directly in an intimate fashion, or the audience themselves cannot interact with each other. But for example, right now we have a bunch of people watching. I'm pretty sure they're all interested in getting into product management. So it would be great if they can share tips on, hey, which company you interviewed for, what are the questions you get asked. But today, there's no, without virtual events like what we're doing, there's no such way that you can have those conversations. But you could do this offline, but not online. So we're hoping to do the same thing online as well.
So basically you started in 2019, you said, and this was an idea inspired on your mom's situation, and now pandemic outbreak happens, and then you are in this hyper growth mode trying to cover so many different use cases around the world. How does your day-to-day change from being a founder of a small team to now running a decent sized organization?
So I think I'm still learning to adapt, to be really honest with you. I historically, I do everything myself. Like I even did the first version of design, which is really awful. So we then took months to get rid of my shitty design. But I initially did everything. Then I started hiring managers. Then I started hiring actually individual contributors who know the space, which is for example, we hired designers, we hire engineers, we hired kind of operation managers. Then now, I'm in the stage where I have to hire kind of the senior manager who can manage the individual contributors. So that's the thing that I'm still learning to adapt. And then I basically need to hire experienced manager who can help scale the company. That's kind of where we are. So we have 50 people. Me and my co-founder, we each own maybe 20 plus people of the company, and she's doing more engineering and QA. I'm doing product marketing, business operation, everything. So for me, it's more learning about different functions that I have never done before. That's the other challenge that I'm learning is there are many things that I've never done before and I have no clue what it is, but I need to hire a good person who understands that. So even if I don't do that, I need to learn what does a great person in that field look like, which is something that I made a lot of mistake in trying to figure out what does a good person like that look like. I'm pretty sure you're doing the same thing. You now have a lot of people too. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is to hire and manage people who are way more experienced than I do and have the expertise that I have no idea about. So that's kind of the stage I'm in right now.
Totally. And I resonate with what you said because it took me time to realize, hey, I cannot be great at everything. I just don't have the time nor the interest sometimes. And trying to learn on the go while building a business and hiring and doing things that go beyond the scope of a product manager. It's amazing because you have to learn the hard way, but at the same time, it's not easy because it's always another challenge. And technically there is no book or business school to cover that for you. And even if there is, you might not have the time to properly learn it. So it's a very interesting friction point between, okay, I want to grow. That's not negotiable. We are here to build something big. But at the same time, we cannot do it alone.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. I think I learned this really, really hard way. I mean, I made a bunch of mistakes. I mean, I guess I'm happy to share that. I mean, the first is more hiring the people who I thought understand what we're supposed to do, but turns out they don't. Then that is a pretty painful mistake. We had to let somebody go because I don't really know what the role requires. Sometimes it's more like I hire somebody that can do this, but then the company grew really fast. So now they have to do more than what they're expected, but then they don't have the skill to do that. So in that case, you either train them or where you replace them. So that's the other thing I guess I'm learning. And the third is that I realized, I have to learn at least some of that. I couldn't just count on saying, hey, marketing, you just do this. I need to learn enough about marketing so at least I can guide the marketer in the right way. But there's just so many other things. I also don't know HR, I also don't know legal, I also don't know finance, I also don't know operations. So I guess there's one thing I don't know.
I think that product mindset that you have comes in very handy because in product, technically you are not the best at anything, but you need to be enough to be dangerous and coordinate all these different teams. That's so right. In a way, it's applying that mindset to a larger scope. But that's why I think, and I've seen a lot of CEOs that come from a product background, and I call them product CEOs.
Yeah. So, I mean, at my previous team at Facebook, we had 30 people, which is also across many different divisions. There was that one of my product was really funny. It was more on creators. But then one thing about musicians is that the copyright is very critical because that's how they get paid. So in my previous team, we had 4 lawyers because Facebook got sued all the time. So we didn't have 4 lawyers in my product team just in case we got sued. We need to figure out what to say and everything. So I did have experience working with different functions. So that was definitely very helpful. Right now, I at least have a general idea. I know, hey, before the product is launching, here's a bunch of team. There's operations involved, there's product involved, there's legal involved. So at least have a general framework of what are the type of people that we might need. And then I can delve deeper into understanding each of them, what exact type that we need. So I think the product mindset is helpful in that it's not just telling you what feature to build, but also how do you make the product go to market? What are the puzzles that you need to do? And also I learned about how to motivate other people because at Facebook, though, the difference is that I was not their boss. So I couldn't really ask them to do anything. I can only motivate them to do those things themselves because I don't have any control over what they're doing. Right now, I guess it is getting easier because I can tell them what to do, right? But before I cannot. But I think the same tactic of like, you always want to make sure your employees feel like they themselves choose to do it, not you push them to do it, right? So I think that being a product manager at Facebook is very powerful yet powerless because you don't get to control anybody. You get to back them in a way that they like to feel motivated. So I kind of learn a lot of tactic of how do you motivate different people who have different incentives. So I think that's like very helpful too. Like, at Facebook, for example, some engineers, they don't care about getting promoted, but they really wanted to work on the most challenging problem. Some people, it's all about getting promoted. They wanted to move their career. Some people just want more visibility. They're shy and they don't get any chance to kind of showcase their work because they're a little shy. They don't raise their hand, but they secretly want somebody to call them and then give them the visibility. So there's many different people with different incentives working at Facebook, for example. So in my old days, more about understanding different people's incentives and motivate them in the right way. So I think the same tactic can still work now that I start my own company.
Totally. I also want to learn more about your own plans for the future, because with this remote work, not just virtual events, but in general, the world is moving online. Teams are working remote. How are you kind of drinking your own champagne? How is your team distributed? How do you use your own product internally?
Yeah, everything we do, we use our own product. So we have all hands, which actually our product was very good for all hands. We learned it because we initially designed for more like, kind of like industry meetups or gatherings or like some creator lead an event, share their expertise. But we realized in order to make that events great, we need to make it engaging, which actually makes all hands a very good use case. So we did a lot of all hands in our company. Every 2 weeks, we have all hands using our product. I used my our own product for like one-on-ones for me, and then did like a bunch of team meetings too. Then we will do some like talent show or some like fun stuff in the company, also using our product. So that's something that we do all the time, and we even assign a person to start a different event, every week. And they have to plan it and make it interesting for the company to kind of participate. And we also encourage our employees to do some events. One person did a wedding anniversary in our own product, inviting his friends over and everything. So they didn't let me know because they don't want me to crash their party. So they told me after the fact. So we did a lot of those type of things as well.
Isn't that amazing that you create a product with a specific use case in mind, and then suddenly you start seeing how the users do something completely different, and that's okay too.
That's right. Yeah. This is totally not what I expected. We had a bunch of like those kind of wedding anniversary type of event. We actually had a whole like comedy show that was very profitable for the performer. We just had a huge concert, like a music festival, where you can there's like many different stages. You can go to a different stage and mingle with this DJ. You can request your songs, and there's some artists. And then they ask that you can give them tips and everything. So it was really funny to hear like a music festival entirely around the world. Not what I expected, but I love music, but that's not really what I expected. But I see that we can actually support that case very, very, very well as well.
Totally. And I think this is a good example for a lot of other people that may be thinking, okay, I have an idea, but Google is doing it or Zoom is doing it or whatever. Well, there's something that always happens when you have a big platform like Zoom, which is you can't really cover every single use case. And it's Zoom, for example, or Google Hangouts, whatever, it's good for some cases. That's but right. Now I like that you're thinking about events, not just for a virtual conference, which is definitely one, but weddings, internal all hands meeting. How can you truly make this experience engaging no matter where and how you want to use the product?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, so I was initially, many people say, hey, you have Zoom. Why do you need to run the world? I mean, we actually knew that because the first time we had our own event, we did it in Zoom. But then people are asking for networking capability. People wanted to keep in touch with each other. They want to be able to monetize. And we did our first event. I was the event organizer for the first event, first virtual event. Actually, before we started the company, I want to make sure the virtual event is something that people actually want to pay for. Back then, it was not. So I used Zoom and Slack and Eventbrite and Wix and everything myself. So I bundled like a fake product based on those existing tools, and I didn't build anything. So we're just selling like I actually invited you as a speaker for that.
I was literally one of the speakers at your first event way before you had a product.
Yeah, it was true. Yeah, and then we sold like $30,000 of tickets for that conference. You know, it was like, wow, that's like really interesting. It was a really shitty experience. You have to download everything as an attendee, but then people still download and then they pay for it. They loved it. So we know that kind of what's missing from each of the tool. Like you want ticketing, you want ability to network with people, you want ability to keep in touch with people, you want ability to be like more interactive during the event experiences. So then we learn from that and we build our own thing, leveraging like what we have learned before. So before we start building our own thing, we already did like 6 events that way. And we start helping like at least 4 other people building their own events using the same exact like hack that we did. So that's kind of what we quickly build the MVP. That's kind of our MVP. And then we did build a real MVP. That took at least like 4 or 5 months to get it going. Yeah.
There's a very powerful lesson there. I love what you said, by the way, because this concept of minimum viable product is not about building something. Sometimes maybe you can leverage third-party tools, like you said, you put together Eventbrite with Zoom, with Wix, whatever, and then you just wanted to validate if customers wanted what you have. And then if there is some positive signs, you can always invest more. But the point is you can build an MVP without investing a lot of money or time.
Totally. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you can quickly test it and then realize how much investment you want to make. So that's the fastest way. Yeah.
So anyway, it's been a pleasure to chat with you. What is it, and as my last question, what is it that one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Younger self. I think I felt when I was young, I'm always really ambitious, but at the same time, I was really puzzled. Sometimes I don't know what I'm. Basically, it's like I got really frustrated when I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do, especially when you're trying to find a new idea. Sometimes you don't have the idea. So like my young self would be very anxious I have to find some idea, and then I feel really bad if I don't find an idea. So I think the advice that I would give is like sometimes it's okay if you just let yourself experiment with different things. As long as you figure out a path, you're like, okay, I'm learning something new each of the exploration. So you don't necessarily need to get it right the first time. It's more about like what have you learned each time. So I think it's more like changing the mindset from I have to get this one versus like what did I learn from different process. So that is the mindset. Once I change that, I think I start getting calmer and I start seeing like myself more as a kind of the growth mindset than just focusing on getting a particular one. And especially sometimes when you're building the product, you may not find the right answer immediately. Or when you're starting a company, you may not find the right idea immediately. So I think if you have this mindset, it kind of helps you stay to the course and getting calmer and accomplishing your goals eventually. So it turns out you may move faster that way by having this mindset.
Love it. We're all lifelong learners.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Somebody was checking the website. If you have any feedback, please let me know. Yeah. And also it is free to start. So let me know if there's any feedback.
Awesome. Take care.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Yeah.